So now, without further ado, I would like to introduce today's speaker, Patty Servais. Patty is a VA accredited agent who began her career as a CPA at Price Waterhouse and retired from CPA work as the VP of Finance at a high-tech company in 2005. Since 2005, Patty has been assisting veterans and their surviving spouses with the VA pension with aid and attendance. She spends a lot of time advocating for changes to the pension and was instrumental in getting independent living approved as a medical expense in 2012 and having the 1018-2018 regulations changed to its current form. So we're thrilled to have the knowledge and the experience and expertise of Patty today. So Patty, welcome.
Thank you so much, Andrea. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the changes that were enacted on October 18th of 2018, and that's really what we're going to focus on in the webinar today. I'm sure there are also a few listeners who don't know much about the VA pension benefit, so I'm going to include an overview for those folks. We're going to go through what is the VA pension benefit, why is this pension so important to people in assisted living and independent living, how the pension works and what's changed, and then why we hope you will work with Elder Resource Benefits Consulting in bringing this benefit to your residents. So what is the benefit? It was established to help our wartime veterans and their surviving spouses pay for the cost of senior care. It is a tax-free benefit, and it was established in the 1950s. It allows the veterans and surviving spouses to have additional funding to help pay for the cost of their senior care. The new rates have come out. The rates increase every time Social Security has a rate increase. This year, it was a 2.8% increase, and these are the new figures. The surviving spouse benefit went from $1,176 up to $1,209. I always like it when it moves to the next $100 mark. Our well veteran with ill spouse went from $1,436 to $1,477. In case you're unfamiliar with that term, that's when the veteran doesn't need any assistance, but the spouse does need assistance. The veteran could still be living at home, but his spouse is in memory care, for example. A single veteran can get up to $1,881 per month, and the married veteran can get up to $2,230 per month. So nice increases. Let me see if I can move this view down somewhere. No, I don't want to leave the webinar. So I want to go through an example of how this is so important to folks in assisted living, folks who run assisted livings. In this example, assume the resident has $35,000 in cash, in assets, income of $2,000, and a monthly facility fee of $4,000 a month with no other expenses. In that situation, they would be out of assets in about a year and a half, 17 and a half months. And with the VA benefit, you can see our surviving spouse, she goes from being out of assets in a year and a half to being able to private pay for assisted living for 3.5 years. Our well veteran with an ill spouse goes to 5 years. Single veteran, 24.5 years. And a married veteran, their assets will last indefinitely because they're in a building cash situation. As you can imagine, it is quite a different conversation that you're having with folks who are looking to move into your community. If you can show them, hey, your assets aren't going to last 18 months. Your assets are going to last 5 years or 24 years. It is a game changer, and we want to make sure that you understand how to bring that benefit to your residents. In addition, if you're not working with us, I would hazard to say there is probably somebody in your community who currently qualifies for this pension and is not receiving it. This is wonderful for stopping financial move-outs. We always recommend that our clients have their business manager, business office manager involved. And the minute somebody is behind on their payments, ask them, hey, veteran or surviving spouse, did you look into the VA pension with aid and attendance benefit? And have them start working on that right away. Okay, so how does the pension work? There are 3 tests to qualify for the VA pension, and they build on each other in a stair-step fashion. You have to pass each step before you can move to the next step. The first step is the military criteria. You have to have served at least 1 day during a period of war, at least 90 days in total on active duty, and have been other than dishonorably discharged. For the surviving spouse, has to have been married to somebody who meets that criteria at the time of that veteran's death. An easy way to remember that is if you divorce the veteran, you divorce the benefit. Hopefully they'll move into your community and marry another veteran who's living in the community today. We like to say, if you meet the military criteria, this is no longer a yes and no award. It is if and when. These if and whens are our next 2 steps. The medical criteria, which is now that the veteran or surviving spouse needs custodial care, and we will go into that. And then the third criteria is the financial criteria, and there's an income and an asset test. This page here is a nice little handout for folks if they're unsure if they meet the military criteria. Goes through each period of war for you. It's important to note on the bottom that for National Guard or Reserve service, they have to have been called up for active duty other than training purposes, which means they've been attached to one of the branches of the U.S. military. We have a quiz. What are the 3 criteria for VA pension with aid and attendance? Number 1, military service. You served in a period of war, you get the benefit. Number 2, military service, medical expense, and financial. Number 3, military service, over the age of 65, and you meet the financials. The answer is number 2, military service, medical, and financial. The reason I put number 1, some people think, hey, if you're in the military, you just get it. And the reason I put number 3 is people often think military service, over the age of 65, and you meet the financial criteria. And no, to get the aid and attendance level, you have to meet the medical criteria. So there is new medical criteria. And what they've done is they say, in order to have the VA treat your monthly facility fee as a medical expense, the resident must require custodial care. This is hard for people in our industry to understand because we all think of custodial care being skilled nursing care. But no, we need the VA definition of custodial care, which is that the claimant requires regular supervision due to a physical, developmental, mental, or cognitive disorder, or they need the assistance of another person with at least 2 activities of daily living. And this is the big change, right? Because by having regular supervision in as the criteria, that means that before they used to say, hey, if you don't need the assistance of another person with 2 activities of daily living, you can't get it. And they excluded from the activities of daily living meal preparation, transportation, medication management, and housekeeping. Those are the first 4 things that people generally need. But show me somebody who needs those 4 things, and I'm going to show you somebody who needs regular supervision. We were able to get the VA to include that by pointing out to them that by excluding those 4 items, we were really being discriminatory, really, towards people who are in the early stages of dementia. So who ends up meeting this medical criteria of needing custodial care? All nursing home and memory care residents, most assisted living residents, some independent living residents, and people living at home who are receiving the assistance of another person with supervision or 2 ADLs. The only reason I say most assisted living residents, We have found 2 people who did not meet the VA criteria. They were both people who had been married to somebody who needed assistance, fell in love with the assisted living, and when their spouse died, they just wanted to stay there. Other than that, we haven't found anybody who just moved into assisted living because they thought the food was fantastic and they wanted to have somebody, watching over their items while they went on their European vacation. We do have people like that in independent living residents. That's why we have some there for our independent living residents. So I've broken this down into regular supervision in the box on your left and assistance with 2 ADLs on the box on your right. So if a resident, going on the left for regular supervision, if a resident needs to live in assisted living or independent living because they were failure to thrive at home, and here's another nice change. It used to be that a doctor with an MD or a DO were the only people who could sign the physician's evaluations. Now they've opened it up to physician's assistants, nurse practitioners, or clinical nurse specialists can say, hey, this person was unsafe to live at home due to their ailments and they need regular supervision. Quick example, we had a gentleman who was emergency move-in to an independent living facility and could not afford, to live there without the VA pension. And so they called on August 30th. And so we only had 1 day to lock it in, and I could not get the son to tell me what his dad needed help with. He kept telling me he was fine. And so finally I said, well, I heard this was an emergency move-in. You moved him from Phoenix to New Jersey and took him to the independent living and said, hey, he needs to live here. What caused that? And he said, he invited me to his house on Sunday for lunch, and he served me a rancid ham sandwich on green moldy bread. Now, if we had written needs meal preparation, we would not have gotten the benefit. But instead, this gentleman was failure to thrive, eats inappropriate objects, requires regular supervision, and we got the benefit. On the right-hand side, this is, except for the fact that multiple different people are now allowed to sign the physician's evaluation, same as before, assistance with 2 ADLs, you meet the condition of custodial care. I put in here arrange for assistance with bathing and dressing after shower because lots of times people will say that they do not get assistance with dressing. They only get assistance with bathing. And I ask them, well, does the aide leave after the bathing while the resident is still in the towel, or do they stay for the dressing? And if they stay for the dressing, then we've got a standby assist with dressing. Custodial care can be provided anywhere, but to deduct the cost of the facility, they have to meet these 4 criteria, which are new. That if their state or federal regulations require the facility to be licensed, the VA says they must be licensed. Most states do not require licensing for independent living. Some states don't require licensing for assisted living. So it's only if your state requires licensing that the VA will require licensing. Facility staff or the facility contract staff providing the claimant with the health care or custodial care that is needed. So in independent living, most independent livings are providing regular supervision. So, that covers providing of the custodial care, whether or not they hire an outside person to do assistance with ADLs. If residential, and I know that this is giving people a lot of heart palpitations, if a residential community, there must be 24-hour care providers. However, the VA has declined to define a care provider. They have specifically said they're not going to define it except to say they do not have to be licensed healthcare providers. But you do need to have overnight staff who would be able to respond if the resident, pulled their call button. And that response can be to call 911, but there has to be a human being that's involved. And number 4, the need for the regular supervision or assistance with 2 ADLs must be the primary reason the claimant is in the community. Again, that is the reason people are in the community. I can't imagine an instance where it isn't the primary reason they're in the community. I just wanted to see if anybody had asked any questions. Okay, where can you use the VA pension with aid and attendance is our next quiz. Independent living, assisted living, memory care, skilled care, home care, and of course the answer is all of the above. Now we're going to do the financial criteria. It's a 2-pronged financial test, the income test and the asset test. We're going to do the income test first. If your income is less than the pension benefit, you've passed the income test. But what is income? Income is all of your income from all sources: Social Security, pensions, annuity withdrawals, IRA withdrawals, interest, dividends, oil well royalties, your rental income, all income. And from that, we minus regularly occurring medical expenses. As long as you met the custodial care needs, that means you get to deduct your facility care cost. And that resulting figure is VA income. So monthly income minus medical insurance premiums, home care costs, and the cost of the facility as long as you are need custodial care. So here are some income test examples. Claimants can receive both full and partial VA benefits. Lots of folks think you can't get a partial award, but you can. So in our first example, if you have income of $2,000, a facility fee of $4,000, you have negative VA income of $2,000. And those amounts listed in that second column are the maximum amounts for 2019. But what if you were lucky enough to have income of $5,000 and a facility fee of $4,000, no other deductible medical expenses? You'd be positive $1,000. What the VA roughly does in that case is they minus the $1,000 you're positive from the maximum pension benefit, and you get the remainder, $209 for our surviving spouse, all the way up to $1,230 for our married veteran. I say approximately because I ignored the 5% amount that the VA takes out based on if you're a surviving spouse, it would be $38, a single veteran $56, or a married veteran $74. So in our partial example, these people have all left $1,000 a month on the table with the VA benefit. It's building up for them at the VA in a flexi spend type of account. And what that means is that they can go to the VA and say, go, meaning filling out a medical expense report, to the VA saying, hey, I'm still in my facility. I'm still paying the $4,000 a month, but I also bought new eyeglasses. They were $500. I, had prescription copays this year of $3,000. And the VA would say, oh, well, $3,500 is certainly less than the $12,000 we have here for you. So here's your $3,500 reimbursement check. In addition, if their assisted living fee goes up, of course, all we have to do is notify the VA of that increase in the assisted living cost, and their VA benefit would go up dollar for dollar until they were getting that additional $1,000 that they'd left on the table. Here we have another quiz. What is the maximum amount of monthly income you can have and still receive the VA benefit? Is it $2,230 if you're a married veteran? Is there no income limit because you get to minus your monthly medical expense? What happened? My screen just went blank. Or is the test, if income minus monthly medical expenses leaves you with less than the maximum pension, you pass. And of course, it's number 3. So it's always important to remember that the income test, there is no maximum income you can have. It comes down to a math test of your income minus what you're paying in those monthly medical expenses. There was no change to the income test in the 2018 regulations. The asset test had quite a few changes. Number one, the maximum assets you can have are now tied to the maximum community spouse resource allowance for Medicaid purposes. In 2019, that'll be $126,420. And I have to tell you, since October 18th, we have filed applications for 40 current clients who did not qualify under the old life expectancy rules, who, the minute the new rules came out, we were able to search our database, send them all an email, and say, get in touch. We think you're going to qualify now. 40 in a 6-week period. That's a lot. So there are, because the reason I say that's a lot is in the original regulations, they had said, hey, there are only 40 awards that were granted last year where the person had more than 100, and at that time the limit was $123,600. 39 of those were my clients. So I got the award for 39 people who had more than $123,000 in a year. And now I'm getting the award for 40 people who had more than 80 and less than 126,420 in a 6-week period. So this really means a lot more people are going to be getting the benefit, qualifying for the benefit day one than qualified under the old rules. Of course, they have also implemented a 3-year look-back period for asset transfers. However, no transfers that occurred before 10/18/2018 are going to count. On the day you apply, only a transfer that would put you over asset of $126,420 is subject to the calculation for how long you have to wait to apply. And you'll notice I have on the day you apply bolded because that is key. Transfers include gifting, purchasing an annuity, which is very different from how annuities are handled under Medicaid look-back periods, or transferring assets to a trust, unless that is a special needs trust for a child who was 100% disabled before the age of 18. That's also a departure from the Medicaid rule, which allows you to set up a special needs trust for your child, even if they became disabled after the age of 18. So the 3-year look-back period, this is how it works. Assume your monthly income less assisted living fees is $3,500, that your total assets are $156,420, which is $30,000 over the 2019 net worth limit. The penalty period the day after the transfer would be $30,000 divided by 2,169. You know, I went in there and I changed this to the new rate of 2,230. So I don't know how that old rate is in there. And what you do is you divide it by the maximum rate for a married veteran. Even if you're a surviving spouse, it's still divided by that 2,230 number. And 30,000 divided by the 2,169 equals 13.8 months. That's how long the transfer would keep you out, except it is the day you apply that matters, which means depletion is the key. So what we would do in this instance is we would say, okay, you're transferring 30,000, or you've transferred 30,000, because we here at ERBC don't get involved in any asset transfers. So 30,000 divided by the 2,230 plus the 3,500 that you are negative each month means that you could really apply at 5.5 months. We would always say, let's apply at 6 months. We don't want to cut it too close and have the VA find some asset or income we overlooked and ruin things for us. So you can see, big difference, 13 months, 5 months. So when people are talking to us and they're over assets, we talk them through their options. You would be surprised. Most people don't want to transfer their assets. They don't want to be on a government program before they're supposed to be on the program. And, this is all of our tax dollars that are going out in the form of this pension. So we like to tell them all the options. An option in this case would be, hey, don't do anything. Don't incur the cost of setting up a trust. Leave your mom with access to all the money and just let it run out. She would be eligible for the pension in 8.5 months, which is just the $30,000 divided by the $3,500 that she's short every month. Transfer and wait, which we laid out on the previous table, she'd be ready for the benefit in 5 months. Or analyze your situation. How much is it going to cost to move to the assisted living? What's the move-in community fee going to be? Have you prepaid your funeral? Do you have a house that you need to invest in? Take all of those into consideration. You might qualify today, even having done the transfer, because your assets, once you move into the assisted living and you minus all of those items out and you add $30,000 back to what your then assets are, you might be below the $126,420. Okay, so what counts as an asset? Cash, stocks, bonds, securities. The two new things that count as assets are the annuity, the cash surrender value of the annuity, and if you cannot cash out your annuity, the entire purchase price of the annuity. And then up at the top here, underneath counts, I have a for sale sign, and it says 2 acres, because now if your house sits on a plot of land that is bigger than 2 acres and the plot is subdividable, and you could sell 2 acres, then we have to provide a market analysis to the VA for those 2 acres and the value of those 2 acres plus, and the value of that saleable plot would count as an asset. What doesn't count as an asset? Your house, your personal possessions, and family transportation. It used to say one car, but they've changed it to say family transportation. And the reason I have a wow there on the house, because everybody knows that the house doesn't count for VA purposes. The reason I have a wow there is they added to the regulation that if you are renting your house because you're in assisted living or independent living or a nursing home, they are not going to count the house against you. Previously, once the house was rented, it became an investment property and it counted against you. So while we did a lot of house rentals in the South, we were not really able to do house rentals for our folks in California, New England, places where homes are really expensive. They were cut out of being able to offset the cost of care by getting some rental income coming in, but now the VA is allowing that. And you might be able to tell from my voice, I am amazed. I find that very generous because, like I said, we do a lot of rentals in Texas, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Florida, but we have not been able to do them in high-cost areas. So here's an example. This was somebody I was down in Virginia last week and explained this example to them. It was a married veteran with $43,000 in assets. Their home in Norfolk was worth about $350,000, sat on a lake, and they have monthly income of $4,000, but both are in memory care at $8,000. So, of course, they qualify for the VA pension today, but what are they going to do? They're going to run through that $43,000 in assets pretty quickly, even with the VA benefit, when you consider they still have to pay the cost of maintaining the home. So they could sell the home, which once it's sold, they would be kicked out of the VA benefit, and then wait until their assets were less than the $126,420. They could look at transferring and seeing what type of penalty they would have. But when I mentioned, to the son-in-law, hey, Norfolk is a pretty, right near Virginia Beach. This is a very big area for vacations and for military. Have you thought about renting the home out? And he said, well, I would never want to manage something like that. And I went through, hey, as long as you don't get more than $3,000 on the rent of the home, I think you'd be able to hire a property manager, not have to deal with that yourself, and increase their cash flow when you add in the VA benefit by $4,730, which really puts them into a good situation as far as being able to pay indefinitely for their memory care and for them to be able to leave their home to their heirs. So the takeaways are that adding regular supervision for physical, cognitive, developmental, and mental ailments makes aid and attendance easier to qualify for. Independent living has been added to the federal regulations as an option. It has been an option since the FAST 1223 letter went out in 2012, and in the 1018 regulations, the VA tried to specifically exclude independent living. We ran a campaign where we emailed everybody that we had ever assisted to be in independent living. We emailed their families and asked them to contact their congressman, senator, and governor, and to make a comment in the federal registry about the impact of taking independent living away. We had 73 of our clients do that, and it was very powerful. They wrote their personal stories, and it resulted in Congress, the congressman being very upset, and they specifically changed the regulation to allow independent living. We now have this bright line asset test of the community spousal resource allowance. That means more residents are going to qualify day one. And if your house sits on 2 acres, and is subdividable, then we're going to have to count that subdividable portion as an asset, but the house doesn't count even if you rent it. So what's the quiz for this? What is the maximum asset limit for VA pension with aid and attendance? Is it $80,000? No. Is it $100,000? No. It's $123,420. But of course, we'd be even happier if you said you don't know and you need to have people call ERBC. So why ERBC? We don't do any financial product sales. We don't refer to people who do product sales. We just present the options. And if people want to transfer assets, we tell them to work with a reputable attorney in their area. We often tell them, hey, your assisted living folks might know an attorney to refer to. We are focused on VA regulations. We are not using the VA benefit as a loss leader in order to sell financial products or to create trust. We are focusing on getting our folks the VA benefit as quickly as possible, as soon as they are eligible. We've been doing this since 2005. We have an average turnaround time of less than 4 months, and that's going to be decreasing. Our average turnaround is 3.5 months, but that included all of our folks who we were assisting with filings who had more than $80,000. Remember, we had 39 who had more than $126,000, but we had hundreds who had more than $80,000 in assets and less than that 126 number. Those folks generally take 9 months, so they're going to be coming out of our average, and we're going to see our average decline. The other reason is we have successfully assisted communities who had a resident that was behind in their payment when they passed away. The VA owed the claimant money. We have successfully helped those communities file for accrued benefits and have the VA pay the community directly. There are 2 ways that you can work with us. You can advertise on the Elder Resource Benefits Consulting website. That's in column on the left-hand side. There is an advertising fee to the community. That starts at $2,500 per community, but folks who are with Senior Living Smart get a discount, and folks who sign up multiple communities get a discount on top of that. Under this option, there is, it says there's no cost to the community, but that's not true. It's supposed to say no cost to the resident. Then on the right-hand side, the other option is you do not advertise on ERBC. You just refer folks to call us. You just give them their flyer. There's no cost to the community under that option. And the cost to the resident it's an initial phone call that is free. If they decide to move forward with us, there's a one-time fee of $800, which is discounted to $700 for Senior Living Smart communities. And then we assist the claimant pro bono with the VA benefit for the remainder of their life, including assistance to have the accrued benefit paid to the assisted living or family member who incurred costs if they pass away prior to the granting of the benefit. So it's a bargain. Our process model is as follows. The community has the financial responsible party schedule an intake call with ERBC. ERBC calls the financially responsible party, analyzes the situation. Step 3, if they qualify and they wish to work with us, we send them pre-populated physicians evaluation forms, assisted living forms, and tell them what data they need to accumulate. They send all of that data to us. We review, hopefully thinking about it in the same way that the VA does. And let me tell you, the application process has become much more complicated. The VA added 15 pages to the application. The 21534, the 21527, which used to be 5 pages long, it is now 19 pages long to 20 pages long, depending on if you're a veteran or surviving spouse, because they've pulled the financials out and put those in a completely new form, because they are now comparing all income for the prior year to look for changes in income and missing assets, and they're making people submit that data up front. And then we mail it back to them, email it back to them, they get it signed, they mail it to the VA, and that's where the average time to award of 3.5 months comes in. And here's our contact information, and with that, I think we're going to open it to questions.
Great, thank you so much, Patty. It's just amazing your level of expertise and knowledge on this topic. It's almost, just as complex as you're filing your taxes, and it's so important that people go to get the right information and get it done correctly. So thank you so much, Patty.
You're welcome. I would say it's more complicated.
I certainly believe you. We've got a few questions. One is, does personal possessions against the norm count? For example, expensive artwork.
So they're not going to come and check. I don't know why there's an echo. But if you have an important artwork and it sells, and you report that on your tax return, they're going to then see that, and they're going to say, when did you buy that? They're going to try to recoup the entire VA benefit. So what I normally say in a speech is, if you have a Picasso on this wall and a painting that your son did when he was 5 looks exactly like that Picasso, they don't care about that son's painting, but they do care about that Picasso.
Great, thank you. Another question. So if we refer a current resident to you for help, will they be provided with other communities to consider if you help them remain in their current community?
No. No, we don't do that. We if you advertise, we say, oh, you're in an advertising community. That's like an $800 bonus just for being in that community. If you're not in an advertising community, we do not bring up, any other community or talk to you about our advertising communities.
Great. So your job is just to get them the benefit.
Exactly.
Great. So another question. What if there is a veteran in a nursing home and a wife in assisted living?
So as long as a veteran is married, the benefit stays at the maximum rate, the $2,230. So if you're in a nursing home and you're single and you go on Medicaid, the VA benefit decreases to $900. But as long as you are private paying or as long as you are married, you will receive the full benefit. So you receive the full benefit for married, even if one of the people or both of the people goes on Medicaid.
Terrific. Patty, again, thank you so much for your time. I encourage everybody to reach out. It's an amazing benefit for your prospects and also for the residents that are currently in your community. Again, thank you all for attending, and Patty, thank you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, everybody.